to the Legends of Iron. I'm Jon Andersen. Meet my co-hosts, Nick Best and Akim Williams. We're going to have some amazing guests on the show. Buckle up tight, because we're going to be talking about the shit you're not supposed to be talking about. We're going to be discussing anything and everything it takes to become a Legend of Iron.
Legends of Iron is brought to you by MuscleMeds. MuscleMeds is the creator of Carnivore Pure Beef Protein Icing. Beef builds muscle, and Carnivore is the world's #1 selling beef protein.
Welcome to another edition of Legends of Iron. I'm Jon Andersen. With me, always my partners in crime, Nick Best and Akim Williams. If you notice, Nick is actually holding it down in a moving vehicle to do the podcast with us today. So, Nick, thank you for getting the job done.
With the family in the car.
There we go. Even better. We are doing Dusty Hanshaw Part 2 because we had such a massively good, eccentric conversation that took us in so many different directions. We couldn't even come close to covering the stuff that, most of you guys think we're going to talk about, such as training. So, Dusty, let's dive in right there, brother. Let's talk about training. What do you think?
I think the interesting thing about training that I learned very early on is that there are no rules, especially with bodybuilding. You're watching a lot of different guys do a lot of different things and get great results. And I feel like that's an area where nowadays versus when we were coming up, there's so much information overload. That a lot of these kids don't know where to start, or they can't stick with anything long enough to see if it works for them. Myself, I was not born to bodybuild in any way, shape, or form. I should have gotten into powerlifting if I was smart, but I was too stubborn and wanted to do this. So it was very natural for me to do progressive overload style training. I used DC training for most of my career, which of course is just progressive overload, low volume, high frequency training, which worked phenomenal for me for a couple reasons. Number one, I like to move heavy weight. I like a scoreboard. When you literally have a log book that you're beating, what always bothered me training was the idea when someone would say I train really hard. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Is it the best workout you've ever had in your life? And when you train progressive overload, you can actually say that, this is the best chest day I've ever had in my entire life. It's a fact, that helped me a ton. Plus I joke, but I'm actually serious that I have a very short attention span. So going into the gym and training 24 sets of biceps or whatever crazy thing people do, man.
Can you just explain progressive overload a little bit for the viewers out there don't know that type of training style?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what you're looking at is you're going to keep a logbook. And the way I did it was I had 3 rotating workouts. So say one day would be chest, shoulders, and tries, a push day. I had 3 of those workouts that I would run. So I'd run workout A today. The next chest, shoulder, try day would be workout B. The next one would be C. And then the 4th is back to A. At that point, I'm looking at this week's numbers and trying to beat them. So the idea is you're either getting 1 more rep, a couple more reps, 1 more pound, couple more pounds. Maybe the other thing
something tangible to actually prove that you stepped ahead.
Yeah, and the big factor is though that gets missed with progressive overload is people start letting their form slip to chase a rep or a number, and now you're lying to yourself. So I used to be very particular about the speed of my negatives or the amount of time in between sets. If one day you take a 10-minute gap between squats, well then of course you're going to be a little stronger than the time you took a 3-minute gap, So that kind of organization is very key to keep it honest. And you also have to understand that you can't progressively overload day in and day out, month in and month out. You're doing 8, max 12 weeks before your body will you'll either start not hitting numbers or, just noticing a little discomfort, not injuries, but definitely some things warning you that it's time to slow down.
Gotcha.
And then during that time period, you have 2 options. You can either do what we call cruise workouts, which is go in and essentially train like the rest of the gym, just get a little pump and don't actually ever go to failure. I had a really hard time with that because I would go to the gym and, you know, you're being smart. You're going to the gym, you know, you take your break. Then you're like 4 days into a cruise and you feel good one day. You're like, well, maybe I should just do a little extra today, which is terrible. It's the worst thing you can do. So I actually used to just take those 2 weeks completely off. I just wouldn't go to the gym for 2 weeks. And then
would you do anything? Would you be active, or would you just literally...
I'd keep my cardiovascular side up. So I would just do walking and stuff outside. And then about 3 or 4 days before I was going to be back in the gym, I'd go in and just get my muscle moving. So I would go in there, but like literally intentionally use machines I wouldn't use. Just let the biceps move, let the triceps move, you know, that kind of stuff. Did a lot of mobility stuff during that downtime, and that allowed me to contain myself.
Okay. During that 2 weeks that you're off, did you notice a dramatic decrease or any type of difference in your strength?
Yeah, well, so this is the other thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I would have forgotten. Is when you go back in after a cruise, you don't want to go back in and try to go right back to the numbers you finished with, and not because you can't. I mean, you might actually be able to, but you're going to shorten that next blast period where you're going all out before you start failing again. So I tell all my guys that I help with this, I'm like, okay, what were you doing 4 weeks before we stopped this cruise? Let's start those as our baseline numbers for this next blast. You know, you definitely want to be kind of thinking about that. So I feel like a lot of that are the areas where you got to keep in mind. It's like powerlifting. You know, you can't go in there and do whatever you love the most every time. Like, I'm going to max out today with 3 sets of 3 or whatever it is. There's a plan that you have to follow through. And it's, for lack of better words, it's an art. Like, I've had people come to me and be like, can you help me with a powerlifting show? And I'm like, no, I don't know how to get you ready for a meet. I don't know what that progression would be. They just think you're strong. You can help me with powerlifting. And I'm like, no.
In all actuality, you probably can. To be quite honest with you, you've already got the principles down correct. Because, I mean, you're coming in, you hit your peak, and then you rest. But instead of resting for 2 weeks and then starting over again, you rest for a week, you hit that big number, and then you take a week off, and then you start back down and working your way into the next one. So you actually probably really can.
So it's pretty similar. That's cool, because I had a feeling that, I think that's what I enjoyed about it is I never wanted to be a guy who looked strong that wasn't. You know, I enjoy like that part of it, you know, when you're and I mean, I know you guys know this, there's just something fun about it doesn't matter where you are, you know, once you got 8 or so plates on a bar that's on the ground, like the guy, you know, I mean, the girl at the front desk who doesn't know anything about bodybuilding is starting to look back like, what's about to happen right now, you know? and I just always love that. And, you know, I think in hindsight, I wish I would have gotten into powerlifting a little bit, just because I really enjoyed the idea of the fact that the bar either moves or it doesn't. Like, it's so simple.
You either get the lift or you don't.
Yeah. And that's an awesome thing that you just, and you know, those days, I mean, I have to assume, Nick, when you're in there, like, whether it's a meet or just a day that you're getting ready, those days that you just know, like, you're doing your warm up, you're like, oh, it's going to be a good day.
You can feel the bar. You can grab it. You know something's good going to happen. You know?
It's just amazing. It's just, you like hit your first couple warm ups and you're like, oh, this is going to go good today. We're getting a big number today.
Right.
And it's kind of neat knowing, like, I think I got 8 in me today. And you just go in and you just nail it.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good feeling when you're lifting all the weights in the gym.
So when did you pick up
I'm gonna need all of those.
When did you pick up this principle, Dusty? How long have you been using this principle?
So I started with Dante Trudell he's the guy that created DC Training, and this is kind of an interesting story that hasn't been told in a long enough time. Your newer viewers won't know it, which is cool. Which is so he used to work with Justin Harris, and you guys might know who that is, but he was a top national level guy. Didn't turn pro at any point. He actually stopped and got into other things. But it was back in the message boards times, and I got on message boards. I was just getting into bodybuilding. I had done a show, and all of a sudden Justin, he trained with Steve Kuklo back in the day. They put his pictures up, and I just remember seeing his physique and being like, I want to look like that. Like he just looked cartoonish. And I felt like he had genetics more like mine, where it was like, it felt attainable. You know, I was like, I can make my body look like that. I'm pretty sure if someone will help me. Whereas, you know, like if I see a guy like Phil Heath, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to look like that. But my parents decided that's not possible.
Right.
You know, so I saw those and I found out that he worked under Dante directly. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd like you to train me. He responded back real nice and he said, I've seen your physique. You don't need me. And so at first I was, you know, I let that be like a compliment. I was like, oh yeah. And then like 2 or 3 days went by and I'm like, no. I don't look like that guy. So I reached back out to him. I said, no, I need you to work with me. And he said, no, he goes, I don't train people anymore. I'm burnt out. I just don't train people. And I literally responded right back and I said, I don't need you to train people. I just need you to train me.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Persistent, man. You want to go get that shit.
I had this in my head. And the problem was for most guys at that point was they couldn't get away from the volume. He would write them a routine and they were like, well, I need to add a little more of this and I need to do a little more of that. And then next thing you know, they're like, oh, the program doesn't work. Well, you're not following the program, you know? And so
you're drastically training.
Yeah. Well, because when you're training with that level of intensity, anything extra is too much. Yep. And that's an area where people fall short. Like if most people were to follow this program, it wouldn't be enough because they don't get anywhere near failure. They think they do. I'm like, you know that part where you'd put the bar down? That was when the set started. Like, that's when it started to hurt, you know? So anyways, I was pretty broke at the time. And I finally just sent him an email. I said, look, I'll pay you what you want. And if I vary even one way, keep the money, never talk to me again. And so he finally broke. I paid him $800, which to me at the time might as well have been $1 million. Sent that off with my hand shaking. And that was that. But since then, I think one of the greatest parts of my career that has nothing to do with competing or the financial side of bodybuilding was I was in a prep for 2011 USAs and North Americans, and I took a picture. It was a rear lat spread, and that was the picture of Justin's that caught my eye. And I looked at it. I was sent him to Aceto, and I looked at it. I go, wait a minute. And I went and grabbed Justin's picture, and I put them side by side, and I'm like, I beat him. Like the moment I knew I had surpassed the goal, I was happy. So yeah, it was just a perfect setup for me. And I think that, like I said earlier, the part that gets tricky that I really try to hammer guys on is, as great as it is for me, it might not be good for you at all.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's tough because part of what you're saying here is that if someone, the only way it's going to work is if they truly understand the depths that they have to push. If they don't understand that, it's almost guaranteed to fail because they're always going to want more work because they didn't get enough out of the few sets that the program is going to give because the intensity is so high, you know? And if someone, like you said, most people, they just don't understand. It's almost like as a parent, you can't explain to a non-parent what it's like to be a father until you're a father. It's just, you can't do it. And until you've experienced, squatting until you truly can't come up or you actually go down with it. You can't, people, they go, man, I went to failure. If I'd have tried another one, I might not have made it. No. Failure means you didn't make it.
Right.
Well, I think that's the point is I always tell guys that I work with this, you'll never know where that line is till you cross it.
Yes. And the thing about it is, and you probably can expand on this, Dusty, when you're explaining that to your guys, it's probably a lot further away than they think, huh?
Oh yeah, that's why I rely a ton on with my clients, particularly anyone that's doing progressive overload or DC specifically. I got to see videos, and it's really tough for them. I've got a few guys like a guy who eventually became a training partner of mine, and I got into the business as well. I think he probably sent me videos for 5 to 7 weeks where every time I was like, better, you're not there. Better. I mean, he probably wanted to kill me because it was harder than anyone in his gym, but he didn't know what was in him.
Yeah.
You know, and you guys know how it is. I mean, when you've been doing it long enough, like you really do know. I'm like, I know you think you couldn't have, but the problem was, like, I wish there was a way to train where you didn't have a number in your head before you started.
Yeah.
Because you ever notice that, like, somebody says like they're gonna do 10 reps. You ever notice the 9th rep magically gets really hard, but the 8th was fine?
Brother, I'm telling you. Oh yeah, 100%. You know how I did this? Just literally what you're describing. When I started competing in strongman, it was almost like this had all kind of fallen in place for me, because I used to basically, when I was in college, I used to just kind of like you're saying, it's fun to load up a bar and watch what people do. And in college, that's all I would do. I'd go to some gym that nobody knew me and just blow people's minds. And part of what I would do is I'd put, say, this is like 1991, long time ago. So 5 plates on a squat bar was a shitload, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I'd walk it out and I'd have fucking zero intentions of putting it away.
Right.
I knew I wasn't putting it away. I knew I was going to crash. And that's how I found more. And I was always blown away where I'd be, fuck, I can get one more. Oh my God, I can get one more. And oh my God. And it was like, you just keep clipping off these one mores until all of a sudden you find yourself finally going back down in the middle of that squat. You think you're going to get one more, and you realize that you didn't get the one more that time. Right.
Yeah.
But that's the way when I'm trying to tell people failure is, okay, look, you have to walk the bar out. It works best on a squat, because a deadlift you can let go. A squat, you got to crash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So walk that fucking bar out, and you're going to pick a weight that you think that you can get for 10, but you're really going to realize that you're going to end up closer to 20, and you're not going to walk it in.
Right.
And that's how you're going to find that line. And many times they'll even bail out and crash on purpose, but at least they get a lot closer to it than they ever figured. Right. But that drill right there is a big one. Now, granted, that's definitely a young man's drill. You don't want to have
Well, I mean, you can do it. It's just,
how many times is the question?
Yeah, not very many times. And it's going to be kind of rough to walk the next day or week.
Yeah.
But, I mean, heck, I think I actually just did that probably 2 weeks ago. I did it on a hack sled.
Tell us a training story, Nick. Tell the viewers a training story. Let's hear it.
All right. So I squatted 771 that day, and then I pulled 675. And then, this was just like 2 weeks ago. And then we finished the rest of the stuff, and then we ended with hack squats. And I was doing tempo squats where I'd come down real slow, sit at the bottom for a couple seconds, and then come back up. And I did that to about 9. Pulled a plate off and did the same process till like 12, pulled another plate off, and then at Flex Lewis's kind of idea, because I was watching him train arms with the guys the other day, I took the 2 plates on each side and just did as many as I could, as fast as I could, till I couldn't move anymore, and fell out of the machine.
Oh boy.
And then did not walk right for about 6 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a few day recovery process there, minimum.
Yeah, I was more than a little upset at myself.
I'm actually I'm more impressed by your lungs than the strength.
That's exactly what I was saying at the beginning of my head right now. The endurance factor.
Well, on that level, what's crazy, when you get your central nervous system so primed to deal with that heavy weight, it's fucking bulletproof when you drop down. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a whole different, doing failure sets. Like whenever I would want to truly find a failure, I'd go to like a really heavy set of 2 or 3 reps. So I got that central nervous system primed. Then it's just like battle tested. And when you go do that crazy drop set shit, it just seems to handle it much better. You agree with what you're talking about, Nick?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
you find that too, Dusty?
I've never done to that level because for me, it literally came down to like a very low rep set for me would be 6.
Yeah.
Like, back in the day, anything below that was not going to be beneficial to the bodybuilding, and definitely my risk to reward ratio got a little upside down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
John, you mentioned something very interesting about the whole nervous system concept. People getting, like, when they go to failure and stuff like that, if you're a beginner and you do it, you usually end up getting sick for a couple of days after that.
Yep.
Dusty, what would you recommend to, let's say, somebody that's just starting off and they want to try the progressive overload program? Like, you would actually recommend them go to failure right away, or like try to get as close to failure as possible before they try to attempt something like that?
Truthfully, I wouldn't even recommend a program like that to a true beginner.
Okay.
And the reason is and I feel free to disagree because I like that anyways, these conversations, but I feel like the best thing a beginner can do is go learn how to train. Go learn how to move weight. Can you bench? Can you squat? Can you deadlift? You know what I mean? All these things, and you enjoy them, Fall in love with the process of training. Same thing with eating. Like, I have a lot of young guys come to me and they're like, all right, so I want to eat like a bodybuilder. I'm like, you're 17, kid. Eat a lot of food, a lot of food.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid of peanut butter and jellies
the rice cakes and the cans of tuna.
Yeah, like it doesn't. You don't have to go to that point yet, in my opinion. Because I think you do. You want to build that foundation, And I think again, when you get into that, the amount of information that's available now, their thought is, well, I know that, Nick Walker's eating this. I should eat that, and I'm like, you're not to the point yet mentally that you will do it consistently anyhow. I'll write diets for young guys, and I'm like, especially if their parents are still paying for things, I'm like, okay, every day go get fast food. I want you to get 2 double doubles, fries. That's going to be part of your day. Like, it was literally part of the plan because they're not eating enough of the clean food to get it done. And it's like shakes. I'm like, you like peanut butter? Cool. Throw a ton of peanut butter in that shake. Like, I can give a number, like 4 tablespoons. That's fine. Whatever. So with the training, I really think I used to do a test with people when they would come to me like in person and they say, okay, I'm ready for progressive overload. I'd say, okay, cool. We're going to go over to the extension and I'm going to put 100 pounds on it, which obviously we all know is very light. I want you to not put your hands on the handles. Okay, go. They're like, till when? I'm like, just go. And I would just stand there. And when they'd rack it and they're like, I'm done. I'm like, yeah, you're not ready for progressive overload. You didn't, you don't know how far you can go. 100 pounds, you can literally mentally, if they're smaller, I would do less. But the point is, choose a weight that's too light. And you can just mentally make your leg do that. You don't have to have strength. You have to be able to go through the pain. Burn is the thing that gets in their way, or their head gets in the way. So I want them to understand, like, in my prime, if you'd have done that, I'd have told you to go get lunch. I'll still be here. Like, we can crank this away until it will not move.
Yeah,
and like you said,
till next week.
Like you said, John, because you have to know that. I mean, I've always felt like I used to post my sets when I would miss, because I was like, sometimes you rack that last rep and you're like, oh, that was all I had. And say you're filming for whatever reason, for Instagram or whatever, now as you look, you're like, even I just left a rep on the table.
Yeah.
And that burned me so bad, because you're like, you can never get that rep back.
Yeah.
Like, you just left it. You know what I mean?
Well, and the crazy part is that whatever, let's say it was that 11th rep, you had to get through the 10 to have the chance for that 11th, and you fucking blew it.
Yeah.
You had to earn the chance for that extra rep, and you fucking let it go.
Yeah, I don't think most people realize the difference between strength and intensity, and that's a very, very different thing. And I'm sure, Akim, you've had people say this. Like, I've had people say, like, why would you be deadlifting 7 plates for those reps? That's dangerous. And then the same guy would be doing 315 for 2, and I'm like, I'm doing that for 10, dude. What I'm doing is safer than what you're doing.
True.
Yeah.
So they're not understanding. It's not weight. It's the same with progression. I think that's another dangerous thing I have conversation with people about all the time. They're like, oh, I can't go up. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't go up? I couldn't add weight. Put a cookie on it, like 2 pounds. And they're like, oh, no, the guy at the gym said if you can't put a 25 on, why bother? I'm like,
that's, oh God.
I mean, what do you mean, why bother? Like, because some movements, I mean, are you kidding me? I used to have 1 pound, like they were magnetic. You could put on the side of a dumbbell if you're doing curls, because like I can't go up 5 pounds.
Yeah.
That's a ton on a single arm dumbbell movement if you're trying to be progressively overloading. But if I can get the same reps with literally 1 more pound, I know I've gotten stronger.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't sound sexy the way people want it to, you know, and I think the disappointing thing is, like, it doesn't matter what I do or how strong I get. I'm not going to do, I mean, there are people who are just strong at everything. Like, I bet you I could hand you guys anything you've never done, and you're going to be ridiculously strong at it because you just are. Other people, they get strong at movements. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, I'm strong at these things. Like, I was always a strong leg and puller, but my pushing was terrible. And it just the way it was. So people didn't understand that progression for me, it was okay that I was only doing 405 on an incline because I was getting 1 more. And I know anytime I say something like that, somebody always rolls their eyes and goes 405. I'm like, I was 300 pounds. That's not heavy.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of it that way. So you want to work that backwards. Like, you doing 150 might be more impressive than that, depending on what you weigh.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I like to push that anytime you have listeners, because it's very often that someone will point out, and I know, Nick, you know this, they're like, oh, I could never be like you. And it's like, you're progressing. You're stronger than you were yesterday. And if it's a bodybuilding thing, I always lay it down really simple for people. If you're doing a deadlift of 405 today for 5, I promise when you're doing that for 15, you will be bigger.
Yep.
You just will be.
Yeah.
I don't even have to get into the drugs or the food or anything else. I promise if you do that for 15 later, you're bigger.
That's right.
100%.
So all this,
yeah,
isn't that the truth? It's what, you know, what you said, it does make so much sense of the fact that if people would recognize this, if they're in the middle of a progression, it's a much better way to look at it.
What makes it fun too, I think that's the thing that I enjoyed so much, is when you're, for example, me, I knew that I wasn't born for this and it was going to take a long time. So like, I did my first like big show in 2006, and I knew I loved bodybuilding. So I said, okay, how long is it going to take me to be able to win this show? So I just kind of started an off season, and it was 2 years and 3 months before I did my next show, and I won an overall. And then I got done there, and I said, okay, now I'm going to just keep doing an off season until I actually know I can be competitive at the national level. So just under 2 years after that, you know, I was probably about 18 months. I'm looking at these local shows and watching the guys that are winning the overalls, and I'm like, I can stand with any of those guys. Okay, it's time to try to do a national level show. And that made sure that when I did junior nationals, I won. And then when I did the USA 6 weeks later, I was in the top 5. I'm like, okay, I belong. But the point of all that is, those are really big goals. They're long. They're gapped really far. I needed things that I could win short term. So I could beat last leg day today. I could walk out and say, that's the best hack squat day I've ever had in my life. So it was fun. It didn't matter that I had no idea when the show was going to be there.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew that those wins would eventually come into play on the stage.
Add up to the big ones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, all this killer talk about training, let's turn the corner into nutrition. So talk to us with this style of training. Clearly, nutrition, what most people don't get. If you can't train with this type of a methodology without having the nutrition to back it up. Talk to us about that.
So this was the part that Dante was a huge proponent of. What's the fastest way between point A and point B? He was, and people in this day and age would have a really hard time with this training, or I should say this nutrition side of this training, because we used to just get big. And when I say big, I mean I was fat too. Like I was just moving weight, eating big, getting big. We're talking when I think I was 240 when I won junior nationals, and I started that at a little over 300. So I had 60 pounds of just shit on me. But that allowed me to put on that amount of mass. That also allowed me to be that strong. Now there is a line there. It's not like, oh, just get as fat as you can.
No.
But the idea is a lot of guys are just over maintenance trying to grow. So like I was eating 2 times my body weight, not my lean body weight, my body weight in protein up until I was 260 pounds. Then it was starting to get a little less like, let's just not go have 600 grams of protein. But 500 was very normal all the time, day in and day out. He was a big believer that if you're going to have extra calories, why not make them the thing that's most responsible for growing, Yeah. And he was very specific about how you ate too. So you would sit down to a meal, and I would, for myself, because I'm not a big eater naturally, I would put down a certain amount of food on the plate that I would refuse to not eat less than. And then if I got done eating that and I could eat more, I would add to it every meal.
Sure.
It was like, no, I could still eat. We'll add some more, And then there were some meals where you're fighting that plate. You're like, oh, because I used to have to give myself a time limit. Like, all right, you have 15 minutes to eat this meal. Eat it. Because if not, I could dance with a meal for 2 hours like a 2-year-old trying to get down the lima beans,
Really?
Yeah. So I would just push the meal down as quick as I could. By the time I was like heavy in off season, I'd give myself 30 minutes to eat each meal and just force it down. So it was like, put the iPad away. I know I'm aging myself, but that's what we used to look at. And and just knock the meal down. But the amount of food was much higher than guys want to eat now. And again, this is one of those areas where I hate these conversations, because if you are someone who naturally gets fat, ignore everything I'm saying right now. Like you have to be mindful of what you are. Like I would have to literally try to get fat. It would take effort to get, like I never had to people are like, oh, you ever do a mini diet? I'm like, no, I just never got fat. Like,
no, dude, that's my polar opposite, man. My whole development of my methodology of eating came because I could fucking look at a cookie and get fat.
Yeah, see, that's the magic, right? Is knowing which side you are and finding where that line is. Because to me, if you need a mini diet, then you took your eye off the ball for too long.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't have allowed yourself to get that fat. Now, obviously, we can get into different things like waking blood glucose numbers and things as well. But like, if you're just keeping everything simple, you shouldn't get fat enough for that to matter. In my opinion. But you do need to have an excess of food. And I think now that the world revolves around showing by everybody what you look like all the time, people aren't just getting big like they used to. I mean, I know, Akim, you remember like when Ronnie and Jay were going at it, when they would guest pose at Pittsburgh, they were just massive. I mean, they were not anywhere near in shape, but I mean, Ronnie come out there at like 330, 340, and you're just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at right now, but he wasn't anywhere near in shape.
Good shape, yeah, exactly,
They were jamming down, and I think that's the other factor that people screw up on is when you're staying so tight to your diet and you're doing so much cardio year round, what do you think it's going to take to get ready for the show now?
Yeah, true.
Now you're doing 3 hours of cardio, and you're eating tilapia with nothing else because you can't go any lower.
You've held it. You held the pedal down so long. You were essentially dieting. Yeah, you got no more chips to bargain with.
Yeah. No, it's really, I mean, it's funny because I think if there was one piece of advice that I could like push to people, it's if anything, oversimplify bodybuilding instead of overcomplicate it.
Yes. That, brother, that right there, for everybody listening, that is such a fucking good piece of advice. break things down to the simplest format and do what you need to do and stop getting fucking lost in the details. There's so many details that if you execute perfectly, you get this little bitty return. Versus if you stick to the basics and you get it 80% right, you get fucking massive results.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that was
and that's all of it, though. That's bodybuilding. That's powerlifting. That's all of it. We overcomplicate this so much, and it's really not that overly complicated. It's eat, train, sleep.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned this on the previous podcast, but when I first started working with Aceto, I reached out to him. We started working, and I said, "Hey, man, like, is there a certain way you want me to train? You know, because some coaches are like, well, with the way I, feed, you're going to need to do this, this, or this." So I'll never forget. I texted him. I said, "How do you want me to train with this program?" His response was fucking hard. And I was like, I can do that.
Okay. Covered.
He didn't get into sets and reps and how long in the gym. Fucking hard. And I'm like, all right, that I can work with. And I love that because it's literally how it worked for me, was keeping it as simple as possible. I know you guys get this, but I'll do Q&As and people are asking, like, should I wake up at 2:36 in the morning and take 2 IUs of growth? And should I? They were like, what did you do? I'm like, I would take things when I would remember to take them. I was like, well, the best time to take this is right before bed because I'll never forget. Okay, perfect. Like, and it was fine.
Back to being simple, man. Keep it simple.
KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep. It is that.
Just follow the KISS. Just follow the KISS principle.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, right now too, like. My youngest daughter's big into bodybuilding. She's 14, doing her thing, and it's funny because she's making awesome changes. So people are like, oh man, what kind of program you have her on? I'm like, I don't have no idea what she's doing. They're like, what? I'm like, she likes to train hard, and that's what she does. I'm like, we don't need to complicate it. Go in there, kick the shit out of yourself, come home. Done. And that's because the other people in the gym, now are, especially the ones who are in the know, oh, they're leaving reps in reserve. And I'm like, no, do not do that. Like, no, just go until it won't move anymore, and then have someone get you out of the machine, and then I'll pick you up.
That's it. I love it. That's beautiful. So let's segue from diet to supplementation. Obviously, you've had a killer sponsor for a long time, Mutant. They've taken great care of you. Talk to us about your relationship with them, man. It's cool to see that somebody has such a long. It's actually it's really kudos to you. Big kudos to you that you've had a relationship such a long time, because it shows what a stand-up guy you are.
You know what it is first off, I think the thing that I enjoyed most about Mutant from the very first time we started, and just to let everyone know before they turn this off, it's not an ad for them. It's actually quite the reverse. They told me day one, we will never tell you have to mention a product. Like, I don't have to mention the products. Like, you don't have to take anything. We're never going to pretend you take anything. To give you an idea, we were doing a shoot over the summer last year, and they have a product like it's a test booster. And I'm taking pictures, and the owner walks in. He walks over, he goes, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, I'm just taking a picture of this. He goes, everyone knows you wouldn't use that. Don't take that picture. And I was like, wow. Because he's right. Like, I don't need that. Everyone that's watching knows I take tests. I'm not going to take a test booster. That's ridiculous. And that is his attitude towards everything. Like, he's an old school guy. Like, I tell everyone, I use their protein, I use their EAAs, I use their pre-workout, and I use their basics. I like creatine, monohydrate, and glutamine. Like, I'm not taking a ton of stuff from them, but I'm representing their brand image. And it's not that the other things don't have value. They just don't have value to me. And I think that that's a key thing in a relationship, because I know any of us who've had other sponsors, they have no shame of all of a sudden you see a magazine ad come out and there's a quote that you never said next to your name. And you're like, I didn't say that. You know, and I mean, so that's what I enjoy about working with them is they let us do our thing and they want to keep it real, even with our social. Like they do not care what goes on. We have a podcast, as you guys know, that they started sponsoring, and I'm like, have you heard the podcast? Like, I wanted to make sure they knew, like, we're talking about all sorts of stuff. I mean, there might be conversations about bodybuilding, might be about music, might be about, you know, different strains of weed. I don't know where this is going. And they're like, fine, do what you guys do, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why it's been a great relationship. Plus, I think the big factor is this year I signed a 3-year extension, and I haven't been on stage since 2017.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And have no intention of going back.
That's definitely huge.
Well, you know that, like I said at the beginning, brother, what it does, it's really a testament to you and your character that you have, you know, whatever sponsor, whether it was nutrition or clothing or whatever, a company that gets behind you because you have you hold yourself in a certain way. You are a certain type of character. So it's a huge testament to you, brother. So that's really cool.
Appreciate that. Yeah. They're awesome. I mean, loyalty is a lost art in this game.
Yeah.
You know, in both ways. I think it's kind of sad. I hear athletes complain about bad contracts and I'm like, when did you ever do extra? Like, what did you do to make sure that you could set yourself apart? You know, and I mean, I know you guys all get this. I get guys asking me all the time, how do I get sponsored? I'm like, stop thinking of it as a gift of money. You're an advertising expense. Exactly. If I could make Mutant $10 million additional dollars a year that they couldn't make without me, I promise they'd give me $2 million.
Yeah.
So that's the magic. You just have to say to yourself, how can I create revenue for them that they do not have?
Yeah.
And if you create enough, I promise there's not a number that's too high. You know, that's where people get confused. They're like, oh, well, you know, how do I do that? Simple. Make it mathematical fact. And it's no issue. I mean, you guys all have businesses of some sort. Somebody wants to bring me a few $1 million in you know, revenue I don't have. I'm gonna make a very sweet deal for them. You know, we're both getting rich on their work. Don't worry. You know what I'm saying? So that's the biggest advice I give guys. It's like,
for sure.
Well, why should I sponsor you? Like, tell me what you're going to bring. And they'll usually say something like, well, I won the Emerald Cup. And I'm like, I don't care.
I think that's definitely one of the differences it is nowadays, especially with like the whole social media. And, you know, you could get tons of young kids straight out of high school going into college that could just put out content. But when it comes to this whole bodybuilding concept, very few bodybuilders are willing to put in the work, even if they get a sponsorship.
I agree. I think that's a thing that a lot of guys need to get out of their mind too. And it's kind of nice. It sounds funny, but being a bodybuilder I was never a threat as a pro to like win. You know, no one was like, oh shit, Dusty's coming. I hope I make sure I'm ready. Like, and
that's right, buddy.
You're not giving yourself enough credit, man. Come on,
but I'm saying, like, you know, I mean, I just know what I am, and the reason I think that's a valuable tool is because then you can turn around and say, but guess what? Why
Let me tell you something.
Getting paid all the time.
I remember me being an amateur, you being an amateur, and there were shows like the USA's or even Nationals, and you were one of the big names going into
at that time, for sure. I'm not denying that. But when I got out of that pond and hit the ocean, the game
it's always like that for any guy that's turning.
I got to tell you guys a story, though. I don't even know if you'll remember this, but when you won the North Americans, we're backstage, and it's you and I, Michael Lockett. Who else was there? There was one other guy staying with us that was obviously in the mix, and you could see this kid who had obviously qualified and didn't know what he was getting into. So we're all just standing there like talking, get ready to come on, and this kid walks over and he looks at us. He goes, "What do you guys do?" And I just thought to myself, that's gotta hurt so bad to like fly from wherever you were and not know. I mean, you know, he looked like a guy who won a very, very small show and didn't have an internet connection and didn't know what he was walking into. I literally felt bad. I was like, been there, dude.
That was right before the game changed when they started giving like 2 pro cards and all this stuff. Yeah.
It was so funny.
Yeah, it was still pretty funny. It broke out that show.
Yeah, it was nuts. But I remembered that. And it's like everyone was like, "Oh, tell me about the show." I'm like, "Well, I only have one story. It has nothing to do with the stage, but I got to tell you guys this."
Oh my God!
What year, Dusty? What year did you turn pro?
14.
Yeah, I did. That was we did it together. I was 14 as well.
Yeah, that show was another one that was interesting because similar situation. So this is what drove me crazy about that level is, so we all had went across and done our quarter turns like in the group, and then we walked back around to weight. And I'm standing there talking with a bunch of guys, and they're like, "So you doing nationals?" And I'm like, I was kind of hoping to win this one. Like, you guys like, I'm not gonna really feel about that until I see how this one shakes out. Like,
wow.
You know, I mean, it was just so funny because I do think that's another interesting process. Like, as much as I knew where I was as a pro, like every time I went to the USA or something, I was planning on winning.
Yeah,
I just got beat by better guys. Like, and I never had a placing I disagreed with. It's just you get ready for a show, you bring your best, and then someone's better.
This random guy shows up.
Yeah, it's like, and then and actually the year that you won, I took fifth or fourth, I can't remember. But anyways, I knew I should.
I was actually one of those random guys because nobody.
Oh God!
For that show.
Yeah, so it's him and Lockett. It's him and Lockett, and then the rest of us. Like we're so far back behind these two, it's not even funny.
Yeah,
but I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I should have been in third. Like I knew I should have, right? And I seen the pictures, and I was like, I should have been in third. And then a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I filmed it. I watched it on film." Dude, my breathing was all over the place. My stomach was in and out. I was like, man, I'm lucky I'm in the top 5. That was terrible.
Wow.
So I always find it funny when guys complain about that because I'm like, trust me, kid, something's off that you're not seeing in the 3 pictures that you enjoy so much. Because I knew, and quite frankly, had I had my shit together, I would have been third. It would have been a long shot from second because, like I said, they annihilated us. But it's funny how people get that mindset in their head. And I'm like, trust me, no one's trying to make you lose. No one's looking out for. I always hated that crap, you know.
Well, dude, but that's just people in general. Nobody fucking wants to take accountability anymore. Forget a bodybuilding contest. They want to take accountability for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
True.
Jesus Christ. No, guess what? You fucking sucked. It wasn't your day. Suck it up, dude. Go back to the gym. You know,
that's what I think's funny though.
Next time you'll suck a little bit less, and you'll find you'll win.
Yeah, get back to work.
You know what's funny though is you do, and I know, like, I mean, at the pro level, you've had this too, Akim. Is like when you have your moment, you also know, you know, because when I won in 14, the stage at the North Americans is tiny. And there were, I don't know, 26 supers, something like that. And I mean, so I'm standing in the back and they've already called out 4 supers. I'm thinking to myself, I gotta be in this mix, you know? And then I hear Steve whisper, like, "Where's Dusty?" Like I hear my name, not my number. Then he finds it and he calls me out. So I'm walking to the edge, you know, because I'm the last guy called out. And as I'm walking towards it, Steve goes, "To the middle." And I'm like, there it is. Whoa. I literally knew right then and there. I'm like, I finally slayed this dragon.
Yeah, that's a good feeling, man, because it's like you know it's your spot, and you get to, it's a short period of time you get to own that place, but fuck, it feels good when you're there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, let's turn the corner to business, brother. So you've got a pretty thriving business. Talk to us about that.
Oh man, business is my favorite thing. So, I mean, I've done a lot before. I owned retail stores and other businesses. But I reached a point where when I was owning retail business and bodybuilding was taking off, I came to a very obvious realization, which was I can be a mediocre businessman and a mediocre bodybuilder. And when I say bodybuilder, I mean sponsored athlete more than anything. Or I can be excellent at one of the two. And I chose bodybuilding because it was a passion and I could always go back to business. Yeah. Like I can't go back to people wanting me to travel the world and do bodybuilding. You know what I mean? So I gave myself a pay cut essentially and went and chased down something I love to do in the bodybuilding because I used to go on trips, and you know how these work. You go over to, say you're in Germany, you do a 10-hour day at FIBO, then you come back and eat, then you go train, then everyone goes to bed. But business owners get on their computer, log onto computers, and start doing orders, product management, making sure something's good. I mean, I would work for 4 or 5 hours after the gym, and then go to sleep and then wake up. And it made me realize two things. One, no one else that was doing the bodybuilding side, the marketing side, was doing that. And also, my competition in business weren't scooting around the world, dicking off for 15 hours a day.
Right.
They were focused on their business, So I sold that. Started, my sponsorships were really good at that point. So I didn't need to do anything else, but I was bored.
Real quick, when you back up, just so the listeners understand, when you say you sold that, what did you sell?
I had 5 retail stores, supplement stores. So I sold those.
Okay. That's you'd actually made yourself quite a business there to sell that off. And
I bought them that way. I actually worked. It's kind of an interesting story that I don't think people think about very often, but when I was 18, I was tinting windows, in cars. Really good money in that, especially when you're 18 years old and don't have a degree or anything. But I hated it. I just hated doing it every day. And finally, I decided I wasn't going to do something I hated for the rest of my life. I quit, and I started working at a supplement store where some of the guys I knew from the gym worked. Making that massive $8.50 an hour, quite a fall from grace financially. But I didn't hate what I was doing anymore. And I realized that at an early age, what was happening was, like, on Sunday afternoon, about 3 or 4 o'clock, I'd start dreading Monday. Yeah. So I wouldn't just lose Monday. I'd lose half of Sunday being pissed that Monday was coming. So I went to the supplement store, and I just did what I do, kind of what we talked about earlier. I just started working harder than anyone else, and just kind of start separating yourself. I got to the point where I became the owner's right-hand man, but I had reached a ceiling. There was nowhere else to go. So I was like, okay, well, I can't make $45,000 for the rest of my life. So I went to him and said, hey, I don't know if there's room for me to do more, but if not, I got to go. And I left and I started a personal training studio, was doing that. And then maybe a year and a half later, he reached out and said, I'm done with owning the stores. You want to buy them? And I'm like, yes, I do. So that put me back in the stores. I got done with the training. I never really loved training in person. The idea of trading time for money just never seemed like I was back into that roof situation.
Yeah,
where I could only make so much money.
You're only going to go so high. Yeah, you're only going to get so good there. Yeah,
and plus I got tired of it, because let's be honest, if you're doing a lot of personal training in a gym, most of the clients that can afford to keep you long term don't really want to work, and the clients you love working out with probably aren't going to be able to afford you for very long. So whereas now what I do, it's all online, and I'm actually the opposite of almost every bodybuilder. Most of my clients are everyday people that have goals, whether it's just to get bigger, whether they're getting ready for their sister's wedding. I mean, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that
lifestyle, bro.
And I find those to be more fun now in reverse, because it's, if I get a great bodybuilder ready for a show, and I've got 25 great bodybuilders right now or so. So, it's not that I don't do that at all, but the majority of my clients, it's you're changing their life, not their physique.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly where I am, brother. It's like, I want to change a life, not a physique.
Yeah.
The physique change is great, but you're changing a life in the process. You're changing that physique, and that's much more fun.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy that part, and you see people really grow on a lot of levels, and they start to realize that
people,
for most of us, that even bodybuilding, most people don't realize that for those of us who truly love bodybuilding, it's actually a mental game. It's very enjoyable to see where your mind has to go, whether it's in the gym or during the diet. The look is fine, but I think most of us can admit that you wouldn't go through the preps and the pain if it was just for the stage. That stage is short, and to me, it's not fun. It's hurry up and wait and stand backstage. And is this shit almost over? I want to get to Cheesecake Factory. What's going on?
Yeah. I can't wait to wash this shit off.
You only act like that when you're not in the middle, though.
Yeah. But it's funny because and when you're in the middle, it's too short.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
When
you
you're in
walk
the middle,
out there
you
and it's
want to stay there forever.
yeah, you're like, really? I was on stage for 2 minutes. That's it. So it is the I call it like you're chasing the uncatchable, which is perfection. You nail a perfect prep, the best you've ever been, and the first thought is, how can I get better? And that's why bodybuilding is the greatest game in the world, because you'll never reach a point where you're satisfied, and if you do, that word is called retired.
Yeah, that's right.
And you stop, you know. So that's the you know, and I do enjoy helping people that like that part of the chase, but you know, the majority of my clients that are competing are people who, you know, I consider somebody who you're like, if I can just do a couple tweaks with your brain, your body will take care of the rest. You know, and that's fun for sure. So that's the majority of what I'm doing there, and then of course everything else is just fun stuff for me, but not very enjoyable to talk about, which is just, you know, real estate and things like those is the real game.
Yeah, right on. Well, very cool, brother. I mean, it's a great story. You basically found your way doing what you love, and you know, when it comes down to it, there's not a lot of people that get to do that. And it's you know, your story took 2 full episodes, you know. So
that's just because I talk too much.
There is no such thing.
But you know, but we talked about some stuff that just like kind of like just organically developed that was really cool shit to talk about. Stuff that you couldn't create a conversation about that stuff. It has to happen on its own in that first episode. So, you know, like this episode's kind of like covering all the shit that people expected we were going to talk about.
The stuff we they're like, why did I have to listen to this? I just want to know how he deadlifted 805. Why did we not talk about that? Now, you know what's funny though is like one thing you mentioned that I have to touch on. I just wanted to change the word. Is it's not that people can't do that; it's that they don't make the decision.
Yes,
correct.
You know, like you have to make that choice, and it doesn't matter where you are in life. Like one thing that I hate is when people trap themselves with money, and then like you can go backwards. Don't worry about what anybody thinks. Like I can go from 80,000 a year tinting windows to $825 an hour. That's okay, you know. And because people aren't willing to take that step back, they have a life of regret. And I can tell you, when I was making $825 an hour, my life was awesome. Like I had fun. I was doing what I loved to do. Obviously, I wanted more. I was barely surviving. But I really think people need to drive that home, because a lot of times we get caught up in the, well, I can't do that. Like, sell your house and go back to an apartment. You'll get another house. Yeah. Don't worry.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's just one thing I have to touch on, because I'm always sad at the fact that is true. I literally know so many people that are like, oh, well, I got to work tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, I work 7 days a week. You take days off? That's weird. I'm going on vacation next week and my work comes with me because I like doing it.
Yeah.
Like,
you know what it is? Like in my house, we don't use the word work for making money.
Right.
You know, you're making money. No, you're not working. I'm enjoying making some money today. I'm enjoying helping some people change their lives. Right. You know, work is it can be looked at, you know, good or bad, but most people, they're going to work. Like, God damn it, I got to go to work.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
And so it's it's one of those things where, again, I love it, brother. I mean, you found what you love and you monetized it. And that is the way that people should live their lives.
Agreed. 1,000,000%.
Yeah. I mean, if you just pick the top, what should have been taught in fucking second grade was, or whatever grade, find the top 3 things you like to do. Maybe at one time it was fucking kickball. Well, okay, it's top 3. Okay, find out of these top 3, you're going to try to figure out a way to make money with one of them. And as soon as you figure out which is going to be easy, you're going to keep going. Yep. And then that love will kind of morph into something else you love that will be monetizable. Right. And then we'd have a world full of fucking happy people versus a world full of pissed off people in fucking traffic ready to shoot each other.
I still hate traffic, I'll be honest, but yes.
Oh, that's funny. You know, it's funny, Dusty. You mentioned that it's okay to go backwards. It's okay to do these things. I didn't really go backwards. I just added to it. Mm-hmm. But I I've always wanted to learn about guns.
Right.
Like I know I own guns. I do some shooting and stuff like that. But a few weeks ago, an opportunity presented itself because I wanted to go and intern at a gun range. Because the best place to learn about shooting is a gun range, because that's all they do all day is they shoot.
Right.
And they shoot all different types of weapons. And so I went into the range 702, talked to Chris, and I was like, hey, what do you think about me interning? She's like, well, we couldn't do that. We'd have to put you on the books because it's too dangerous.
Right.
But when do you want to come in and start?
Right.
You know, and so it's been about 10, 15, almost 2 weeks now. But I've been going in and learning about shooting. I've learned more about guns in the last 2 weeks than I learned my whole entire life. And it's absolutely amazing. And it's just kind of one of those things where I found something I wanted to learn about. I'm going to people that, for me to get an education on this would cost me tens of thousands of dollars. I shot the gun I shot, it was a fully suppressed MP5. This is $100,000 gun.
Real quick, I don't know what that is, Nick. So I don't know what an MP5 is. So tell everybody what that is.
It's a 9mm fully automatic machine gun that is suppressed. So it's
suppressed.
So you don't have to wear hearing.
No sound.
Oh, it's not loud.
No sound.
Yeah.
It's like it comes out of there. You don't need to wear hearing protection or anything if you shoot the gun. It's
how the fuck do they make a machine gun quiet like that?
Tesla makes it.
Yeah. That's pretty good. No, a suppressor will take a lot of the sound out of the gun as it goes off. You have to get a
silencer. Is that like the thing they put on the end?
That's exactly what a suppressor is. It's a silencer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just
so
called a suppressor.
That's the weapon that when the guy in the fucking movies is going to kill somebody, he has one of those on there so he can shoot somebody, and nobody knows that he's put 16 bullets into some fucking guy standing in the hallway.
Yes, correct.
It's funny.
Okay.
It's kind of funny. I'm sorry to cut you off, Nick. But it's funny you just said Tesla made it. So I was heading to the city yesterday, and I'm in my Corvette, and this guy pulls up next to me in a fucking I think it's a Rivian truck. I think it is. Those electric trucks or whatever. So he pulls up and he motions for me to wind the window down, and I look over and he's just like, "Nice car. Is it fast?" I was like, "Yeah, it's fast." He's like, "You want a drag race?" I was like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to drag race an electric car, bro." I was like, "You don't have a real car." I'm like, that's not a real car.
Does not count.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
No, it's good stuff, man. But it's always something. It's like, don't be afraid to try something new and to step backwards if you need to, and stuff like that. Always be moving forwards in life. Find things that you're interested, that you want to learn about, and go jump into it full bore, because everything's going to work out. It really is.
Yeah, the problem is just a lot of either complaining or wishing. Like you said, that's the other part is if you're working an 8-hour day and you got 9 hours, you can put aside time for your family, the whole thing, and there's still going to be 3 or so hours that you could put into a passion that could start out as a side gig and might slowly work its way into becoming the only gig.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't, because there are people that can't take that step back. I mean, I was married and had no kids, so we could be broke together. That was fine. But there is a way out of all the scenarios. But I find that most of the issues are you don't want to put in the work for it.
Yeah.
Or you don't want to take your fancy car back. And I think a lot of that's visual stuff, where what will the neighbors 100%. Think? Who gives a shit what the neighbor thinks?
Well, it leads back to what you said a minute ago, brother. They're not making a decision that this is what they're going to do. And sometimes sacrificing the car and the house and all the shit that flashes is part of the decision, which they are afraid to make.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing is at the end of the day, in my situation, now what I left would be a sad living compared to now. So that step backwards eventually became a drastic step forward.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. I push that with the girls all the time because it is the world where, how much money are you going to make? And I'm like, it matters. Don't get me wrong. but not as much as do you like what you're doing, because you can be miserable making $200,000 a year, and you can 100%. Be happy making 40. So don't think that. I think everyone thinks that they're money motivated, and most people aren't.
Yeah. Well, you got to think of you think in terms of delayed gratification. Right. Because what you love is not going to pay up front. You're getting paid with the fact that you don't have to do shit that you don't want to do. And then because you love it, you get so fucking good at it, you become like a over the top expert. And then you just make this fucking load of money because you become so good at something you love. And so it's like you're getting paid. You just that the cash part is delayed. You just have to realize that's part of the process. That's because you can go get that job and make money sooner right now. And you'll fucking hate your life for the next 40 years.
Yeah. I'm going to pass on that one.
I think we all did, thank God. I think all four of us here passed on that. Christ. Of all the shit that I've done, my favorite claim to fame is I've never fucking collected a paycheck, not one day in my life. I've never fucking taken, not one day have I said, thank you. I just worked for fucking a week or 2 weeks or however the fuck that I've never been to an interview.
That's amazing. That's actually, I got to give you that one, because that is there are levels to this. And you sir win.
And you just blew it out of the water.
Many paychecks.
I was sitting around a table talking to my little brother, and he's like, I was at this interview and and I had this kind of funny look at him. He's like, what? I said, I just fucking realized I can't relate to this story at all. I've never fucking been to an interview before.
At that moment, your brother remembered he doesn't like you.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's freaking classic.
Oh, shit. Well, that being said, Dusty, thank you so much for your time. The viewers have got a solid 2.5 hours of Dusty Hanshaw.
They won't be looking for me anywhere else now, so we're good. The guy that won't stop talking.
But brother, this was a great time, and we really appreciate you coming on it. And you had some really, really insightful things to share with our listeners, so we thank you, man. It was a good time. But before we wrap this baby up, Nick and Ak, you got anything for Dusty before we wrap it?
Nah, man, it's just a pleasure. I mean, I missed the first one, so this is my. I'm a part of the second one, so
he's a celebrity guest.
And I just want to say, I just want to say thanks. I mean, that was a great interview, and the takeaways that people get out of this is just going to be amazing. So, thank you for doing that, Dusty. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise, guys. Thanks for having me on, and we look forward to the next one. I'm sure, like always, we bump into you guys everywhere, all over the world, and never anywhere near our houses.
That's right. That's true. That's it, and that's it, everyone. There you have it. Another episode of Legends of Iron. If Dusty Hanshaw did not get your brain kind of twisted a little bit to look at things from a different perspective, to show you maybe there is a different way, I don't know what's going to do it. That being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time.
Legends of Iron is brought to you by MuscleMeds.
It's time to stop around. You want to build some muscle? You want to build some serious muscle? Well, guess what? Beef builds muscle. RTD, carnivore, ready to drink, lactose free, tastes great. You want to build some muscle? You better start eating some beef.
Beef up with carnivore RTD. 40 grams of protein, 0 fat, 0 sugar, 0 lactose. What the are you waiting for? Get yours today.